The House will please come to order. I would like to welcome everybody to the sixth day of the session, Monday, February 19th, 2024. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Convening roll call for February 19th, 2024, the sixth day of the session. Alamand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Plouston? Conrad? Crago?
Excused.
Davis? Eklund? Haroldson?
Excused.
Harshman? Heiner? Henderson?
Excused.
Hornock? Jennings?
Excused.
Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec?
Excused.
Northrop? Oakley? Obermueller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman?
Excused.
Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza?
Excused.
Rodriguez Williams?
Excused.
Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer?
Excused.
Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut?
Excused.
Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers?
Here. Chief, let's keep that roll open. I think committee number one for sure is out. You got a few that are straggling in, so I'll let you get them though.
Storer?
All right. Well, the prayer of the day today is by Reverend Bob Thompson from the Cheyenne Presbyterian Church. Please rise.
Good morning, and thank you for the privilege of coming before you to pray for your work. From Psalm 24, lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty, the Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Almighty God, as we begin a new week, we acknowledge that you are the beginning of all things. You are the creator. You have given us this beautiful world to live in. We recognize the beauty of this great state of Wyoming, and we are blessed to call Wyoming home. Lord, we thank you for your creativity. Help us to be mindful that all that we have and all that we see belongs to you. We are only stewards of your creation. God of all seasons, as we live in the cold days of winter, we pray for all people who have to survive in this condition. We pray for the homeless, provide them shelter and food through the services in this community. We pray for all who have to work out in the cold, for first responders, firefighters, police officers, for construction workers and sanitation workers, power to make them happen. On this President's Day, we remember the presidents who have served this great country, and we lift up in prayer all those elected to office. By your providence and through the voice of the people, these women and men here have been chosen to serve as representatives in this state. As these women and men serve in this session, we pray for your Holy Spirit to guide them, that they may serve with energy, imagination, and love. Give each legislator and government worker a knowledge of your will for the world, for Wyoming, and for their communities. Empower them as they serve a public trust beyond personal gain or glory. May they see that no community or state lives for itself alone, but is responsible to you for peace and the well-being of all people. God, I thank you for these representatives, for their willingness to serve and the wisdom that you have given them. We ask you to bless their efforts. I pray for their health and strength during long days of hard work. Provide them energy and clear minds. God, we know that most of these women and men are away from their families as they serve in this capacity. And we pray for those relationships, that you strengthen them and bless them during this time. God, I pray for the work that is coming before them in these coming days and the work they will see today. As they study and debate, may you guide their decisions by your Spirit. Lead them through the process of discernment, that the work they do may reflect your will and bring you glory. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Thompson. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Live on!
The House will please come to order. Chief Clerk, please finish the roll.
Crago? Here. Haroldson? Here. Henderson?
Excused.
Jennings? Here. Nemec? Here. Ottman? Here. Provenza? Provenza?
Excused, though I saw her.
Rodriguez Williams?
Excused.
Washut? Rodriguez Williams?
Let's just go with that for now, Chief.
60 present, 2 excused.
All right, Representative O'Hearn, is he around?
Privilege of the floor, Mr. Speaker.
Please.
If you have not signed, Patty is walking around with the paper for the killed soldier or killed officer in Sheridan. If you have not signed it, come back here, and Patty's got it back here. She doesn't have everybody's signature, and she would appreciate it, as we all would. Please sign. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative O'Hearn. Representative Allred, do you have a privilege?
Mr. Speaker, privilege of the floor.
Please.
If I can get so ladies and gentlemen, here in the south balcony, we have the government class from Swift Creek High School in Star Valley. We have, would you please stand, Fallon Harris, Bailey Levitt, Abby Stone, Alyssa Wiley, Brad Parsons, and their teachers, Cameron Christensen, bus driver John Passy, and Steve Tree. Would you please give them a warm welcome?
Hey! Welcome to the House. Representative Alaman,
Privilege of the floor.
please.
Thank you, sir. I have some very good friends here today. I have Dan Sbrosky, who is one of Casper, Natrona County's biggest activists, does a great job for us. We also have Ross Shiftman from Casper. He's the president of Natrona County chapter of Wyoming Right of Life to Life, and he's a member of the Jewish Pro-Life Foundation. Ross does a lot of good work. Dan, stand up.
Welcome to the House, Casper. Any other privileges? Looks like Representative Davis or Representative Newsom. Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know a lot of us went to the school board's reception last night, and a lot of us had the pleasure of having dinner with our school board members. And one of my school board members, Stephanie Bell, is in the west side, and I would like to welcome Stephanie. She's been a longtime school board member and many-time chairman.
Welcome to the House and welcome school boards of Wyoming. And thank you folks for the service you do for our children in the state of Wyoming. Representative Davis, please.
Mr. Speaker, privilege of the floor,
Please go ahead.
or the House. To the West Gallery, I would like to also recognize School District Number 2 from Carbon County that are down here too. They're one of the, in my district. Thank you, guys.
Representative Allemand, are you going to make another run at this or? Oh, they left. Okay. Are there any other school board members in the audience that didn't get, if there are, stand up. All right, there we go. Once again, thank you for your service to our children. Representative Jennings, privilege?
Privilege, Mr. Speaker.
Please go ahead.
In the North Gallery, there is County Commissioner Holly Jennings.
Welcome, Commissioner Jennings. Anybody else for a privilege? It's really good to see Representative Angelos back, and we wish her well. And all right, Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 16th, 2024 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Ward and Chestick.
Your doctor for the day is Jason Bloomberg, who has been serving the people of Wyoming for more than 20 years. He is a graduate of the University of Wyoming Family Medicine Residency of Cheyenne and serving our nation's veterans for more than a decade. Today is his fourth day volunteering during this legislative session. Thank you, Doctor. So members of the 67th, I'm going to kind of give you a rundown for the day. So next we'll do standing committee reports and try to catch up on that work from last week. And then we'll go into Senate files on first reading. So I got one bill I need to read in for introduction. And then we'll go to bills on third reading and final passage consent list. And then we'll go on general files. So we'll go to committee of the whole after that for a little while. We'll see what our time is. And then we will spend the rest of the day on budget bills second reading. And it looked to me like last I heard somewhere around 81 second reading amendments. And we have to get through them. So that means there's probably going to be past 6 o'clock, past 7 o'clock, if I'm guessing. So with that, we are at that order of business of Senate files on first reading. The first Senate file for our consideration is Senate file number 2. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
Senate File 2, sponsored by Management Council.
First reading of the bill.
Legislative Budget.
Senate file number 2 is referred to committee number 2, appropriations. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, I think we're there. Oh yeah, no, standing committee reports, sorry. I lied, I just wanted you to get up out of your chair. Standing committee reports.
House Bill 74, sponsored by Appropriations, Public Health Nursing, Budget Requests, an act relating to public health and safety. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2 appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 74, Public Health Nursing Budget Requests. Respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. House Bill 77, sponsored by Representative Washit. Simple assault and domestic assault menacing, an act relating to crimes and offenses. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1 Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 77, simple assault and domestic assault menacing, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Crago, Oakley, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Noes, Representatives Chestick, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemec. Representative Washit, Chairman. House Bill 79, sponsored by Blockchain. Secretary of State, expedited filings, an act relating to the administration of government. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 79. Secretary of State, expedited filings, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Representative Olson, Chairman. House Bill 81, sponsored by Representative Banks. Public Officer Training Amendments, an act relating to administration of government. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 81, Public Officer Training Amendments, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Representative Olson, Chairman. House Bill 83, sponsored by Appropriations. Public Retirement, Actuarially Determined Contributions, an act relating to public employees' retirement. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 83, Public Retirement, Actuarially Determined Contributions, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. House Bill 90, sponsored by Representative Rodriguez-Williams. Newborn Child Safe Havens, Age of Child, an act relating to children. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 90, Newborn Child Safe Havens, Age of Child, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Chestick, Haroldson, Jennings, Nemec, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Noes, Representative Provenza. Absent, Representatives Crago, Oakley. Representative Washit, Chairman. House Bill 92, sponsored by Representative Stith. Protection of Parental Rights, an act relating to parental rights. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 92, Protection of Parental Rights. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Allred, Andrew, Berger, Brown, Clouston, Lawley, Northrup, Obermueller. Noes, Representative Provenza. Representative Northrup, Chairman. House Bill 141, sponsored by Representative Western. State land, oil, and gas leases, operator requirement, an act relating to state lands. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business and Economic Development, to whom is referred House Bill 141, State Land, Oil, and Gas Leases, Operator Requirement. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Tarver, Western. Excused, Representative Lawley. Representative Burkhart, Chairman. House Bill 138, sponsored by Capital Finance. State funds pool, a participation and fund limits, an act relating to the investment of state funds. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 138, State Funds, Pool, A, Participation and Fund Limits. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. House Bill 145, sponsored by Representative Western. Open Banking Amendments, an act relating to banking. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business and Economic Development, to whom is referred House Bill 145, Open Banking Amendments. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Tarver, Western. Excused, Representative Lawley. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
Thank you. I think Chairman Northrup has an announcement, and then I'll go to Chairman.
Privilege of the floor, Mr. Speaker.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. This week is Wyoming School Board's Appreciation Week, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the school board members who serve across our great state. These locally elected representatives devote significant time and energy to the Wyoming public schools, ensuring every student benefits from a quality education. As locally elected officials, school board members provide important leadership for our educational system. So please join me in thanking all the local school boards for their leadership, work, and service to the state of Wyoming there in the balcony.
I think this is a new crew that came in, so I do want to thank you for educating the children of Wyoming and the great job you folks do. And you're well compensated for it too, right? Yeah, I thought so. So, thank you. Anybody else? Chairman Olson,
Mr. Speaker, can I do a re-referral?
please.
I'd like to re-refer House Bill 79 to Committee Number 2 Appropriations.
House Bill 79 is re-referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations without objection. Is there any objection? No. All right. Are there any other referrals? We had some bills that kind of got a little bit dragged behind the re-referrals. So you, Chairman, if you heard one of your bills today, we probably need to re-refer that, even though we may have done it Friday, because we can't re-refer a bill till it's read in. So I know there was like 2 or 3 of those. I think that there were some mistakes. So, Chief, are you going to sort it out, or the chairman need to sort it out? And it's not immediately right now, but anyway, we need to figure that out. So if you all re-referred to bill last Friday, please look at and let's take a look at that. And we should have that record going to appropriations. So I think that's where we should look at it. All right, Representative Craig, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the consent list consisting of the following House bills: House Bill 14, House Bill 20, House Bill 21, 34, 40, and 71 for your consideration.
Would anybody like to remove any of these bills from the consent list? Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the House? The chief clerk will call the roll. Oh, you need to read them in. That would help. Will the reading clerk please read the bills on the consent list?
House Bill 14, sponsored by Labor, prior authorization regulations, an act relating to the insurance code, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. House Bill 20, sponsored by Education, school finance, regional cost adjustment study, an act relating to school finance, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. House Bill 21, sponsored by School Facilities, charter school leasing, an act relating to K-12 school facilities, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. House Bill 34, sponsored by Minerals, solid waste municipal cease and transfer funding, an act relating to the prioritization of municipal solid waste facilities cease and transfer projects, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. House Bill 40, sponsored by Corporations, school district trustee oath of office, an act relating to school districts trustees, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. House Bill 71, sponsored by Appropriations, broadband development, sub-account amendments, an act relating to economic development, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Now, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the House? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Clauston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson.
Excused.
Hornock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrop. Oakley. Obermueller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams. Sherwood. Singh, Slagle, Smith, Stiff, Storer, Strock, Stivar, Tarver, Trujillo, Walters, Ward, Washut, Western, Winter, Wiley, Yin, Zwanzer Dan, Zwanzer Dave, Speaker Summers. Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 excused. As for House Bill 14, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 excused. As for House Bill 20, are there any changes? Jennings, aye to no. Smith, aye to no. Slagle, aye to no. Stivar, aye to no. Winter, aye to no. Allemand, aye to no. Locke, aye to no. Further changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 54 aye, 7 no, 1 excused. As for House Bill 21, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 excused. As for House Bill 34, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 excused. As for House Bill 40, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 61 aye, 1 excused. As for House Bill 71, are there any changes? Hornock, aye to no. Ottman, aye to no. Penn, aye to no. Andrew, aye to no. Smith, aye to no. Slagle, aye to no. Stivar, aye to no. Haroldson, aye to no. Ward, aye to no. Bear, aye to no. Strock, aye to no. Angelos, aye to no. Rodriguez Williams, aye to no. Winter, aye to no. Heiner, aye to no. Knapp, aye to no. Jennings, aye to no. Allemand, aye to no. Pendergraft, aye to no. Locke, aye to no. Nyman, aye to no. Further changes? Further changes. Closing vote. Vote closed. 40 aye, 21 no, 1 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, House Bills 14, 20, 21, 34, 40, and 71 have passed the House. And just a note, Representative Henderson is okay, but he's having a bit of a health emergency, just so keep him in your prayers. And with that, we will move on to, I believe, the Committee of the Whole. So I think, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, let's resolve ourselves.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House resolve itself into Committee of the Whole.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, no. Chairman Burkhart.
Committee of the Whole, please come to order. I apologize for my scratchy voice, but we've got work to do. First bill for our consideration is House Bill 23. Reading clerk will please read the bill.
House Bill 23, sponsored by Representative Larson, JT. Vehicle registration, e-certificate, and grace period. An act relating to motor vehicles. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred House Bill 23. Vehicle registration, e-certificate, and grace period. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Berger, Brown, Nemec, Obermueller, O'Hearn, Pendergraft, Smith, Stibar, Wiley. Representative Brown, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 23 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and with that, I turn the explanation over to the good bill sponsor.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm bringing you today House Bill 23, Vehicle Registration and E-Certificate and Grace Period. Members, this just clarifies in statute that treasurers may issue a physical or electronic version of the vehicle registration. It also gives a 30-day grace period to get your tags on your vehicle. What this does is if someone has to pay on the last day of the renewal period for their vehicle, they have 30 days to get that tag in the mail and get it on their vehicle. They've paid, everything's updated in the system. Just gives them that little bit of a grace. So, and it also helps people who have trouble traveling to the courthouse to make their payments and on their vehicle registration. So I ask for your favorable vote on this bill.
Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, question having been called. All in favor of House Bill 23, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 23 is passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 24.
House Bill 24, sponsored by Labor. Certificate of Need repeal, an act relating to public health and safety. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred House Bill 24, Certificate of Need repeal. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Chadwick, Clouston, Hornock, O'Hearn, Penn, Trujillo, Ward, Yin, Zwanitzer. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Chairman Zwanitzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move when the Committee of the Whole rise to report it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 24 do pass. I would further move the Standing Committee amendment at this time and turn over floor management of the bill to the good representative from District 57.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill repeals what is called the Certificate of Need. It's if you want to build a nursing care facility, you have to get permission, or you previously had to get permission. This repeals that provision and would be a victory for the free market. So I encourage a vote aye.
Representative Ward, do you want to discuss the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the amendment just clarifies that we're changing the word approval to comment for the purposes of healthcare and life safety compliance only. That's so the folks who would be opening a facility like this would have the opportunity to have comments from agencies whether or not it would pass life safety compliance rules. So again, it's not that they have to give their approval, they just have the opportunity to comment on. And Mr. Chairman, let me know if I missed anything.
Okay, is there any discussion on Standing Committee Amendment number 1? Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm a little confused on the amendment. The way I read it, it says that we're changing from comment to approval, back to approval. If you could explain that to me, thank you.
Representative Ward.
Mr. Chairman, need your assistance here.
Chairman Zwanister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when we drafted this statute in the interim, they went back and they realized that we had overdrafted basically and taken in too many components of what the Department of Health survey and licensing reviews across the gamut of our healthcare facilities, both private and public. And so the amendment was a way to ensure that the point where they would have comment into the process. So again, this is a process where you're building a new hospital or new healthcare facility, and you don't want to build the whole thing for $20 million and then have the department come in and say, hey, you missed the HVAC unit downstairs, you got to rip it all out and spend $10 million redoing it. This is where they come in every step of the way, just like a contractor would in your residential house, and say, yes, we agree, everything's up to code, everything's good to go. And so through this process, there are certain points that you want comment, and there are certain things you need approval on. And so we divided in the amendment, you want the Department of Health approval and consent when it comes to anything that the federal government pretty much requires when it comes to life safety, healthcare or life safety compliance. And those are pretty much things that deal with the federal guidelines when it comes to any federal funding, CMS, and Medicaid or Medicare. So if you're treating any of those patients, you have to follow these federal guidelines on how you build your healthcare facilities. I know I'm going too long here, but basically, you don't need the Department of Health to approve everything along the way. And so this really was to eliminate some bureaucratic red tape and some burdens that probably don't need to be in place. We've had them in place for 40 years. Many states are rolling these back. The federal government had in place for a decade. They rolled it back. And so it really is now more of a free market enterprise with a standing committee amendment.
Representative Larson.
So I think maybe a little perspective, I think we want to be really careful as you contemplate whether we move forward to that. And the only reason I say that is just based on Wyoming's rural nature and the distance. And we consistently talk about the need for stability in our healthcare delivery. And I appreciate the concept of letting the free market govern what beds are in place and what beds are not. And so just a little historic perspective is in long-term care, as you have nursing homes in your community.
Representative Larson, we're on the amendment.
I'll hold off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on Standing Committee Amendment number 1? Question being called. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Standing Committee Amendment number 1 has been adopted. We're back on the bill. Representative Larson, please continue.
Thank you. No sense being stupid unless you show up, Mr. Chairman, and I try to do that at least a few times a day. So what we've had in place historically is at one time we had the same provision for hospitals. So and the intent was that you add stability to the entity that's providing healthcare. So hospitals, you didn't come in and have multiple hospitals in a community, that you ensured one could be somewhat successful, and then if they needed to build out, they could, or if there was a need for more beds, then another hospital could come in competition, which we've seen. That was dropped, I believe, in the 80s. The same capacity condition has existed in long-term care, trying to ensure that particularly that the quality of care is met, that if there's and that's the argument that I think that you'll find from long-term care providers, is that there's really competition for the private payer and the Medicare patients. The hardships on these facilities are the Medicaid reimbursements, which we are trying to help out in this bill. But up in the basin where the bighorns are at, we had one long-term care facility close this last year because a medical facility come in and bought up and no longer took care, allowed for the Medicare patients and the private payer patients be served there. They took them across the state line and served them elsewhere, and they couldn't sustain on what Medicaid paid. In this bill, there's also, it talks about swing beds in hospitals. So when somebody who's on Medicare goes in and has surgery, and there's a rehabilitation period, they use what they call swing beds, where they get reimbursed on a Medicare rate. And in some long-term care providers can provide those rehabilitative services, and then some hospitals do as well. And so taking this capacity, this restriction that's been in place, opens the door, and I think that that's a fair argument that free enterprise can come in, but it certainly will impact how our long-term care providers and hospital providers that have swing beds respond moving forward. So myself, I'm a little hesitant at this time to support that, but that's just me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am in favor of this. So a little bit of history, like our last speaker. I once worked to build a facility that provided long-term care, and they were extremely limited on the number of beds that they could build. They provided a fantastic service. They provided a necessary service, but they were really limited on the number of beds they could build and what they could do with their facility when this service was needed in the community. Here in Wyoming, we have an aging population, and right now the certificate of need constricts private companies from being able to evaluate the area and make an assessment, make a judgment call on their own of whether or not they think they could build a facility in one of our communities and be profitable with that facility. So I think this is really important, opening the door, allowing them to do that. Right now, there's certain restrictions, not allowing them to build within 30 miles of another facility if there's a certain number of beds that are full and whatnot. So it really constricts things. So our communities are limited on the options for providing long-term care facilities. I'd like to open the door to let private companies come in and evaluate and see if they could be profitable, and let them do this. One of the interesting things that was mentioned earlier was that one of our facilities up in the northern part of the state has closed. And interesting thing about that is because our department that works with health came in and built a facility in that area. And so it effectively kind of pushed the facility out, pushed the need out away from this facility. And the department that works with health in our state is exempt and immune from these certificate of need requirements. And so they are exempt, but all of the private entities that want to come in are not exempt. And so this opens the door and allows more of a free market aspect. And so let's do this. Let's give it a try and see what happens in Wyoming and see if this really helps our long-term care. Thanks.
Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for this bill, as was alluded to the previous speaker, this bill, what it does is basically levels the playing field. So the state agencies are not required to comply by these basically prior authorizations of building. And what happens, and we have seen happen in our state, is because a state facility can build within the 10-mile time or parameters that are currently in statute, where private entities can't, they'll come in and build. And then, so a major issue that's going on with our long-term care facilities is staffing. They're not full because they don't have staffing. And what happens with the staffing in these state facilities have come in some circumstances, the staff leaves where they're at the nursing home, and they move to the state facility, which further damages and injures what care can be provided at the nursing homes. So once again, on and for.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe just a little further conversation on what an existing long-term care facility could do. As mentioned, that they're restricted on their ability to expand. They can expand 10% a year based on, without being exempt from this. So they have the ability to expand their existing facilities. The one in my community just recently expanded. I think the bed capacity is, I think within a 30-mile radius, your bed capacity has to be at 85% before a new provider, a different provider can come in and build. So if it might be 83%, but so when it drops to more than, when it's less than that, when it gets up over that on beds filled and there's a need, then you can respond. So I would push back on the argument that when there's really no bed capacity that somebody else can't come in. I would argue that perhaps isn't the case. Let's talk about why the state might be exempted from doing that. Well, let's go. There's also a comment that the state come in and built a long-term care facility up next to the one that closed. That's incorrect. They did not build a new facility. There was a facility there that was designed as a skilled nursing facility, which most of our long-term care facilities are. And that building in the system also had and has been for longer than I've been in the legislature taking long-term care from the community, and what impacted the one that closed down was that the new owner took all of the patient payer sources that in your business model, in your payer mix, left them with the Medicaid patients, and it was an unsustainable business model. Now, why would the state be exempt from such a thing is because in the redesign of our state facilities at the state hospital and at the Life Resource Center, they have skilled nursing facilities. In Lander, they have skilled nursing facilities that are designed to take those who are more difficult or dual diagnosed that the long-term care providers around the state don't feel that they can handle, and the intent and in statute is that the state facilities then can take those, evaluate how acute their situation is, and provide the services for them with a discharge plan in place to get them to return back to the long-term care facility from whence they came or back to their family. And so as they've designed these long-term care facilities on the state facilities, it's much better for the state if we have the private folks there to take care of those and not the state. But the state is exempt from that for that purpose so that they can build out state facilities and redesign them as they're needed.
Any other discussion on the bill? Representative, Ottman, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing that I'll ask is we have some state facilities, and some of them are incredibly nice. The one over in my part of the country has been remodeled, and things like that for, I think, upwards of about 5 years. we have to take COVID into consideration, I guess, but hundreds of millions of dollars, and also hired people away from the smaller facilities. Now, this is for nursing homes, not disciplinary care or behavioral care, but just for long-term facilities. So what I would say is to give, since we have that 85% threshold that we need to make to see that the beds are filled, if there's a need, that seems to be more beneficial to the communities. If there's a need, let's build one. If there isn't a need, we won't build one. But to give the opportunity for those communities to do that. Consistently, we hear that the population is aging, and it is. And so as we look at what facilities are there and how long they've been there and what we're going to need in the future, I would say that this is an opportunity to meet that need before it's an emergency. Thank you. I would vote yes.
Any other discussion on the bill? Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just think that we need to make sure that we've got information out there to help us make the right decision. I think probably, if I understand correctly from the department that oversees in aging, that the statewide average is about 65%. There's some conversation about how important it is to the private sector, and then we just heard testimony about how our community should be able to invest in long-term care. And I think that those are two really important points too, because you've got local nonprofit long-term care providers, might be a community, might be a county, might be whatever, and then you've got the for-profit private sectors. And so the two of those exist in there, so it's not just the protection of the private business world, it's how that goes. There's a conversation on staffing and competition for staffing. It's a real deal. Nurses go from long-term care to state facilities to hospitals and there's real competition for CNAs, direct care staffing, and nurses. Bringing more into the system seems to me that would aggravate that to be more acute, that it would be more difficult to find staffing if there were more beds available. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Newsom.
Thank you so much. It seems to be that the meat of this bill is in the repealers. And so I wonder if the bringer of the bill would describe what is being repealed. Thank you.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It repeals certificate of need, where you had to get permission to open long-term care facilities before. That's why it lets the free market come in and determine what is needed in the community instead of being determined by the government. So in short, it repeals what was called the certificate of need, where you had to get permission to open long-term care nursing facilities.
Any other discussion? Are you ready for the question? Question having been called, all those in favor of Representative Zwanitzer's motion, and when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that bill number, House Bill 24, do pass, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 24 is passed committee of the whole. So I'm going to take a brief privilege. I believe, and it's hard to see because of the glass up there, that a former legislator is with us. Doc Hallinan, are you up in the North Gallery? Good to see you back here in the House. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 25. Reading clerk will please read the bill.
House Bill 25, sponsored by Labor, Medicaid third-party payor conditions, an act relating to the Wyoming Medical Assistance and Service Act. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred House Bill 25, Medicaid, third-party payer conditions. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Chadwick, Clauston, O'Hearn, Trujillo, Yin, Zwanitzer. Noes. Representatives Hornock, Penn, Ward. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman.
Representative Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move in the Committee of the Whole rise to report it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 25 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I would turn over floor management of the bill to the representative from District 59.
Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, House Bill 25 has no repealers, and on page 2, line 12, all this bill does is require all healthcare providers to respond within 60 days to any inquiry by the state regarding a claim for payment. I'll stand for questions.
Any discussion on the bill? Are you ready for the question? Question having been called, all those in favor of Representative Zwanitzer's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report to do so with a recommendation that House Bill 25 do pass, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 24 is passed Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 33. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
House Bill 33, sponsored by Minerals, Mining Operations, Blasting Requirements, an act relating to environmental quality. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business and Economic Development, to whom is referred House Bill 33, Mining Operations, Blasting Requirements. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Lawley, Tarver, Western. Representative Burkhart, Chairman. This bill was re-referred to Committee number 2, Appropriations. Mr. Speaker, your Committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 33, Mining Operations, Blasting Requirements. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Henderson, Larson, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Noes. Representative Nicholas. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. Representative Vice Chair Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill number 38 or 33 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I turn the explanation of the bill to the representative from the valley that was named after a famous explorer and mountain man.
Representative Conrad.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thank you to the representative from District 18. Members of the 67th, this is a bill we spoke about earlier upon introduction. As just a background, there are 50 non-coal sites at this time that would require a blasting plan. Said differently, there are 50 sites out there that have no requirements or regulations or oversight as it comes to blasting. This is very much needed, obviously, specifically based on the fluctuation, or more in this case, the exponential growth of mining. To give you some perspective, according to the BLM, there were 4,700 new non-coal mineral claims filed in 2023, with the majority of them being obviously gold, lithium, uranium, as well as other rare earths. I would appreciate your passage of this moving forward, because it does protect the public. Primarily, this is the bill that does protect the public. So in case there is blasting that is nearby a residential area or another building, it ensures, in fact, in this case, that there are regulations that again, ensures that there's no cracks of foundations, et cetera, but also avoids litigation. So both players, both entities understand specifically what the requirements are based on that blasting plan. And I think this is a huge advantage for us. As we've talked about, coal is really taken care of, but we have over 50 areas now that do not have mining plans, and more importantly, any requirements or requisitions or requirements or regulations surrounding the blasting. So I think this is incredibly important, and I turn the time back.
Is there any discussion on the bill? Representative Nemec.
On and for. This really increases safety in our communities. These small blasting locations, they really need to do these blasting plans and submit them. We just can't rely on using the P factor when we're dealing with explosives. Thank you.
Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have two questions for the bringer of the bill. One is, if this were to fail to pass, does it preclude any blasting in these non-coal mining mines or other applications? Second, there seems to be a considerable appropriation for one FTE. It's about $200,000 a year. I know some of that's going to be benefits. So if you could just explain what that FTE is going to be conducting and why it's so expensive. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions too. Typically, not always, but typically on these bigger blasting operations, there's a contract that is let by the mine, and the contractor will come in and do that blasting. Sometimes not, but even if it's not that way, there are still, I don't know if I can say the safety requirement, the mine safety requirements, the occupational health safety requirements. There's the company safety policies that these blasting companies will abide by. There are obviously the insurance that these companies pay when they're doing this kind of work is probably quite high as well. And so there are liability issues that they just carry as a company. So the explanation kind of makes it sound like they're going to be blasting in the front lawn of the Capitol here, and we're all at risk. So I think that doesn't quite explain really what's going on, just because these companies have a whole host of requirements that they have to abide by. They are going to strive as best as they can to do things in the safest, absolute safest way possible, or they become liable. So wouldn't that be the case? So I'm just not sure of the need really for this bill. Thank you.
Representative Conrad.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thank you for the past questions. Let me address them if I captured them correctly. First, to the good bringer before, the good speaker, specifically of precluding mining operations or blasting. Would this failure, would it preclude that blasting? The answer is simply no. They will still blast. They will still blast, but whether they have the public in mind or not is a different story. Obviously, to the second question, they will do so safely, obviously, because blasting is inherently dangerous. But this position, more importantly, within this bill, which we'll talk about in just a second, relates to the oversight of the blasting plan to ensure that the attenuation and the seismic activity doesn't propagate or promulgate further than necessary by using the correct quantity of blasting, et cetera, so forth. So let me go back and more importantly address the latter question about liability. Right now, that's the problem. There is no definitive mechanisms or boundaries as it relates to who's responsible for what. Yes, in fact, the question is, hypothetically, someone could come out here and file a mine permit and get permit to mine limestone underneath the Capitol or near the Capitol. But there's no plan that has to be necessitated or reviewed in this case to ensure that that seismic activity won't damage the Capitol and or the Supreme Court building or other buildings around the area. Right now, as we speak, there is a position, and we'll talk more about that in just a second, there's a position that oversees all coal blasting to ensure that the correct values, the correct quantities are necessary for blasting that doesn't inhibit or, more importantly, promote side effects in this case. So with that, let me dovetail into this. Right now, there is no requirement for these 50 mines that I mentioned now, or the 4,700 different permits, that requires any sort of communication. And the beauty of this bill is specifically is that the blaster has to communicate with the nearby residents or buildings or mall, et cetera, about what blasting is going to take place. They have to ensure that part of the checklist, they understand what blasting is going to occur and that the charges in this case will not damage, destroy, or break any foundation. So the question about liability came up. If someone says, well, you know what, my foundation cracked and they were actually blasting nearby, Right now, it becomes a litigation, and it would preclude any future mining until that resolution was, or in this case, that determination was made by the courts. It inhibits mining. The beauty of this is that the industry brought it to our attention, that they want to ensure that they're doing everything right, legal, and appropriate to ensure that the public is protected as well as the specific companies, so that that liability portion is clearly defined. One of the concerns which I'll address proactively is, as we look at the fiscal note, there's been a lot of questions, a lot of emails specifically, as it relates to the fiscal note. If you refer to that fiscal note, you'll see that the total appropriation here is $502,846. It's a lot of money. But over 2 years, I want to share with you, it's $301,423 for 25, and it's $201,423 for year 2. That's incredible. The emails that I've received thinking that this person, in this case, is going to make $301,000 year 1, and an additional $201,000 in year 2. That's completely incorrect. Let me share with you as I walk through this. 0100, the personal and benefit costs are approximately $138,000. That is the position with benefits. You can see the following year, it's the same. So that's the value of this person's wage with benefits. So 138 for the person. The additional one on 0200, supportive service costs at $147,000 year 1 and $47,000 in year 2, specifically relates to this, the purchasing of a vehicle. Now, no, it's not a $147,000 vehicle, but it is a portion of that $147,000 is to allow this one person to drive across this state through the 23 counties to ensure that, as I mentioned, those plus 50 non-coal blasting areas are doing it correctly, legally, as per the regulations, whether it's NFPA, National Fire Protection, and or the international blasting. There's a multitude of regulations. So this one person will be able to have a vehicle. We talked about specifically, how about maybe borrowing a vehicle? It's not conducive in this area. This person will be traveling the entire state, one person. So say that's $47,000, just take a vehicle, whatever it may be. The remaining $100,000 of that is to purchase 3 seismic monitoring pieces of equipment to ensure that, as we mentioned before, that seismic activity does not damage or has a potential to damage areas surrounding it, whether it's residential, whether it's industrial, et cetera. That will purchase 3 pieces of equipment. There are already 2 in the hands of the DEQ now, Land Quality Division, but those are being utilized specifically for coal. We're going to purchase 3 based on the proliferation of the exponential growth of our mineral excavation and extraction. The following year, you can see in 2026 is $47,000. That value would be for the recalibration and obviously testing of that equipment to make sure it's correct. Central and data service costs at $1,200. That's miscellaneous costs, obviously, for reports, et cetera. And the other one there was under contractual service costs. That's a $14,234. If in fact we need to contract additional areas out for this testing of the equipment or recalibration is necessary. You roll all that up, you have $301,000 in 25. In 26, you have $201,423. That is the FTE. The FTE is not, let me repeat, the FTE is not a salary for $301,000. That's everything in totality together. And in conclusion of these remarks, I share with you just a couple of other ideas that I brought up during our introduction. 95% of our rare earths are acquired from a country called China. We have an opportunity here in the state of Wyoming to expand our mineral growth, our base of taxation, et cetera, so forth. Unfortunately, with the demise of coal and or the war that's on coal, the only minerals that are standing now, as we talk about, are trona, potentially others as well. But this specifically addresses the bentonite blasting, lithium, nickel, and hopefully uranium, among many others, whether it's zinc, nickel, whatever the case be. We just don't have a plan, legislators, to ensure that when they blast, it's done safely and it protects the public as well as the mine owner themselves. Thank you.
Majority Floor Leader Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one curiosity question for myself. Has there been any cases or incidences like brought up to the committee that would have said that we have seen damages due to unregulated mining or blasting? Or were there any cases that came up that would have prompted the, basically the urgency to address this? If those cases, what they were, and if they were any available?
Representative Conrad.
Mr. Chair, thank you, and great question. Specifically this time, we do not have any information that denotes to a specific instance where we have a damaged foundation in this example. But I want to reinforce that we are in our infancy in this area, as I mentioned, not to reiterate or rehash this, 50 mines now we have, and in addition, 4,700 additional permits. So right now we don't. We're trying to get in front of this, which is beneficial to all of us. And I think it's admirable that the administration, in this case, the mine operators and the industry, has asked for this to ensure that both parties are protected. So at this point in time, we do not, but we're trying to get in front of this to ensure there never is.
Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a note. Many of you probably have had similar experiences to me where I did work in a mine for a while. So I was front and center on some of this blasting stuff, and I did work for a company once and got to light the fuse. It was one of the best days of my life. So, but beside the point, one thing I learned in that process is that these blasts actually are not done that day. It's actually something that is weeks in the making and weeks in the planning. There's computer software that they use to design and develop each and every blast. And so these companies that do this are extremely careful in the way that they do this and the way they operate. So I just don't really see the necessity of this bill at this point in time, and it just kind of grows our government a little bit here and will potentially expand it in the future. So please vote no on this bill. It doesn't make sense at this time. Thanks.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have just one question here. Does this specifically apply to mining only or demolition? In the agricultural business, if we have a log jam in the river, we set a charge in there and blow it. But so I'm a little confused. Demolition, with the destruction of buildings and things like that, taking them down. That's my question.
Representative Conrad.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. No, this bill is specifically for mining operations. You may still maintain your cache of TNT at the house for your beaver issues. This specifically is related to the mining component, nickel, uranium, bentonite, et cetera. It does not have anything to do with those folks who may have nitroglycerin or TNT at their homes for other purposes.
All right. Representative Tarver, did you wish to speak or are you only pacing? Okay. Representative Lawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the bill. Two important responsibilities of the state of Wyoming is the protection of public property rights and the responsibility for public safety. And this bill addresses both important things concerning, again, an area that we have growing in our economy. We had testimony in committee that there are some of these mines that are encroaching on housing development. So there are some issues there, not every one of them, but there's enough of an issue there. There was a question about what happens now when there's a problem with private property. Well, the truth is we don't really know completely what happens because there is no process for them to report or complain about that except perhaps through the court system. So often what happens is the private property owner is left to fight with and try to negotiate with those who are doing the blasting to get their property restored or to recover from any damage. And that's exactly what this statute is going to address for those private property owners, is basically giving some guidelines, setting standards for these blasts so that they can then protect their rights and recover when those rights are violated from some of this blasting. So I just wanted to address those specific things, and again, on and for the bill.
Representative Ottman, did you wish to speak? You were at the mic. I guess not. Representative Tarver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted you guys to know that the Mining Association actually is in high favor of this. We already do this for the coal industry. Basically, we're just going to expand it into all of the other industries, and it'll be actually a protection for the private property people and also the minings. Thanks.
Representative Conrad.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. To the good representative from House District 42, I do want to share with you a couple of issues, or more importantly, a couple of examples here. Right now, we have a gold mine out there that is within earshot of the Kurt Gowdy Park. Now, as you visit that park, do you want to make sure there's some plan in place that protects you and or your family? This would do that. By voting no on this, let me be clear, by voting no on this, you would say you don't need, or blasters do not need, a specific plan that articulates the explosives going to be used. They don't require a blasting plan. They don't require any rulemaking. They don't make any amendments, and more importantly, they don't have to communicate to anyone. So that's why it's critically important that we get in front of this, so I'm not approaching you in another year or so, or someone else, and saying, you know what, we have this issue here where we have a cracked foundation elsewhere. This is proactive legislation that will protect our public. And it does ensure that there's a liability blanket placed on us, most importantly, the public. So having been in the industry, the mining industry for 30 years, this is one of the first ones that I've ever known of that's been proactive in nature, that's not been reactive. And I would ask for your favorable consideration in voting aye on this, after the explanation that you can defend related to the cost. Thank you.
Question having been called. All those in favor of Vice Chair Heiner's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report it, do so with a recommendation that House Bill 33 do pass, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 33 is passed Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is, Representative, do you wish a privilege? Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, privilege of the floor. Today, I would like to introduce members of the Laramie Youth Council. They are visiting with Nancy, our city clerk. If you guys would stand and be recognized, thank you for your work in Albany County.
Representative Alaman, do you wish a privilege?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Proceed.
privilege of the floor, please.
Proceed.
We have two school board members that are fantastic ladies from Natrona County, Jennifer Hopkins and Mary Schmidt. Please stand. Then, we also have an awesome lady who I credit with saving my life. Sarah Beaver, a nurse from Casper.
Any other privileges? Okay. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 35. Reading clerk will please read the bill.
House Bill 35, sponsored by Minerals, limitation on environmental rulemaking, an act relating to environmental quality. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 9, Minerals, Business and Economic Development, to whom is referred House Bill 35, limitation on environmental rulemaking. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Banks, Burkhart, Conrad, Heiner, Knapp, Larson, Tarver, Western. Excused, Representative Lawley. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Vice Chair Heiner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill number 35 do pass. There are no standing committee amendments, and I turn the explanation of this bill over to the representative that's getting a lot of time behind the podium up there.
Representative Conrad.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and Vice Chair, thank you as well. House Bill 35 is a limitation on environmental rulemaking, and let me explain this. We did speak about it briefly during our introduction, but I want to particularly call your attention to this. This bill's purpose is to ensure that the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality does not encroach, or more importantly, make more stringent laws or regulation that impacts us negatively as an industry in this regards. Now, the question becomes is, well, why would we ever do that? And more importantly, if there is something out there that requires more stringent, let's do so. So if I may, those who are still with me, and as we continue the momentum we have, on page 3, I want to ensure that on lines 7 through 14, I want to highlight one, specifically line 11. What we're proposing in this legislation is to ensure that no rules will be promulgated that impose standards or requirements that are more stringent than the federal law, rules or regulations that are applicable to any federal program that the state maintains primacy over. The most important part of this bill, which I'll share with you a couple of examples, is on line 11. Unless the department, being the Department of Environmental Quality, identifies the needs for rules or regulations that do impose more stricter qualifications on this. But in order to do so, the Department of Environmental Quality will consult with regulated stakeholders. I'm on page 3, line 21. Will consult with regulated stakeholders to identify a list of existing rules that are to be reviewed by the Director of the Department of Environmental Quality to conform to existing rules to the requirements of this act, but also including a timeline so we don't drag this out. And finally, this report of those specific rules and regulations will be reported to the Joint Minerals Business and Economic Development Interim Committee on the rules identified. So the question there is, why would we ever have rules that are more stringent than what we see now? There are a number of examples. Let me share with you 2 of those. The first one is, we had an issue in the upper Green River Basin where we're related to ozone. The designations on that basin was it was a non-attainment. We listed that as serious instead of marginal. The DEQ is because marginal was a little less loose, for lack of a better word. The ability to do so was allowed us to attack that area, no disrespect intended, but to attack that area to ensure that we got back into compliance faster than we would have if it was strictly marginal. That stricter designation allowed a quicker resolution of the issues and was welcomed by the oil and gas industry and allowed economic activity to shorten the time up necessary to combat that, get it back into place, and begin that exploration. The second one, which more importantly you may find of better interest, is this. The phosphate plant. There's a phosphate plant in the southwest corner of Wyoming. Hydrogen fluoride has been associated with the weight loss of cattle. As we speak today, the EPA does not have a standard addressing those issues. The Agricultural Community, more importantly, had concerns. They had concerns which we were able to address through the rules and regulations where the Wyoming DEQ got involved and ensured that there was no damage to obviously cattle and or that loss of life and or economic input. So there are a few instances where this is the case where we do need to have stricter, but for the majority, whether it's 90% or 99, which will be determined by the study that's going to go on, we'll be able to identify where we need rules and regulations that may be more restrictive than the federal government, or more importantly, where they don't even have rules or regulations. So based on that, this is, I think, another proactive bill that protects us, our communities, our shareholders, and our values. And I'd ask for your favorable consideration.
Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So maybe a good question for the bringer of the presenter of the bill. I agree. I think the federal government gets it wrong sometimes, and I'm glad that we are putting in protections in between where things can come into conflict, like agriculture and mining. My question ultimately is this solving an existing problem? Are there things where the council has promulgated rules that we didn't like as a legislature where we needed to have this sort of oversight over the council that didn't previously exist? So are we micromanaging the council? Are there things that the council has done that we did not like where this is necessary? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Conrad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the representative of District 16, I think it's a valid question, and let me address a couple of issues. It's important to understand that these are for rules and regulations that the state has primacy over. So there are obviously federal regulations which we do not carry primacy. That's an important factor. One instance that I can share with you most recently is there's been a movement now whether it's WOTUS, Waters of the United States, and/or the particular matter ruling from 10 microns down to 2.5. This gives us the ability to manage that accordingly to our own environment proactively. As I mentioned already, the ozone issue in the Green River Basin allowed us to become in compliance quicker than it would have with the federal government. But I do want to share with you, it's my understanding that the Environmental Quality Council would welcome this, to give them some guidelines and, more importantly, a lane to drive compliance that addresses our concerns of our citizens where laws may not exist, as one example. Thank you.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate this bill coming out of Minerals and hope that we'll support it. I think one of the challenges that we have in the agency as they try to comply with federal requirements is sometimes the federal agencies will come down with what they call guidance. That doesn't necessarily make it law. It doesn't necessarily make it required, but they sure, and it doesn't always have the act of Congress. It'll be in a rulemaking thing where they say, this is the guidance that we think is appropriate. That doesn't necessarily mean, and it can be very restrictive in coming down to parts per trillion in several parts per billion. And so then for our department to determine what is appropriate for industries, for the safety and the well-being of people and within the state, I think is really important that we have this bill to allow them and give them some guidance, and I hope that you'll support it.
Other discussion? Question having been called.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Conrad.
No, sir, thanks. And we'll get to that question. I apologize. Thank you to the representative from District 54. I do want to share with you just two examples here real quick. The first one is when we look at the Colorado Salinity Act, that is an act that does impact Wyoming but doesn't carry a lot of meat. This bill would allow us to regulate that accordingly. Additionally, just to follow up and reinforce what we heard earlier, legislation from an environmental perspective in Florida rulemaking should not impact the state of Wyoming, whether it's in Maine, whether it's in Texas. We need to take control of the primacy that we have and ensure that we are compliant. And the Wyoming DEQ has done an incredible job and are just a phenomenal group of people that have our best interests at heart. As challenging as it may be, they're great people and they are supportive of this bill. So ensure that you understand the Wyoming DEQ does support this bill. Thank you.
Whoa.
Point of order.
No agency names.
It was a test.
I let the first one go, the second one no. So, are you ready for the question? Question having been called. All those in favor of Vice Chair Heiner's recommendation, motion that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report, it do so with a recommendation that House Bill 35 do pass, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 35 is passed Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 46. Reading clerk will please read the bill.
House Bill 46, sponsored by Representative Walters. Chancery Court timeline for resolution of disputes, an act relating to courts. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 1 Judiciary, to whom is referred House Bill 46, Chancery Court timeline for resolution of disputes. Respectful report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chestick, Crago, Nemec, Oakley, Provenza, Rodriguez-Williams, Washit. Noes, Representatives Haroldson, Jennings, Representative Washit, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. Representative Washit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, to do so with the recommendation that House Bill 46 do pass, and I turn over explanation of the bill to the good representative from the center of the state.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you, members, is House Bill 46, the Chancery Court timeline update. And so remember, folks, the Chancery Court is a forum for an expeditious resolution of disputes, primarily in the business realm, when you refer to business filings and things like that. And it's been learned over the last couple of years as the Chancery Court has gotten up and running is that the 150 days from the time of filing is just too quick due to things that are outside of the court's control, such as locating the plaintiff, serving the defendants, filing proof of service, initial motions, things like temporary restraining orders, temporary injunction motions, motions to dismiss, motions for judgment, pleadings. All of these various things will counterclaims, cross claims, third-party claims, all of these things have to take place prior to ever setting the schedule. And so trying to resolve these within 150 days has been very problematic. It is aggressive in any time schedule. So what this bill does is change the timeline from 150 days from time of filing to 150 days from the point of the setting the scheduling order. And so that allows for everyone involved to have time once the pretrial activities take place to then get the work done. And this has been brought before us by the courts that operate in this area, as well as the attorneys that operate on both sides of the actions that have been brought through the Chancery Court. Everyone has been noticing that this is just an unrealistic time frame to meet, and that by doing it from the point of the scheduling order, 150 days from the scheduling order, it will allow the appropriate time, still a very aggressive time frame, but allow the appropriate time to accomplish these tasks. So I would ask for your favorable consideration and happily answer any questions if there are any.
Representative Stiver? No, okay. Any discussion? Question having been called. All those in favor of Chairman Washat's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report, it do so with a recommendation that House Bill 46 do pass, please say aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 46 passed the Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 54. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
House Bill 54, sponsored by Representative Washat. Wyoming Reads Day, an act relating to legal time and holidays. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 4, Education, to whom is referred House Bill 54, Wyoming Reads Day, respectfully report, same back to the House with a recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Allred, Andrew, Berger, Brown, Clouston, Lawley, Northrup, Obermuller, Provenza. Representative Northrup, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Vice Chair Northrup? Oh, Chairman Northrup.
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill number 54 do pass, Wyoming Reads Day, and that the explanation of the bill will come from the good chairman from House District number 36.
Representative Washat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, to be brief, you remember on introduction, I talked about a couple of wonderful people from central Wyoming who have created a foundation in honor of childhood literacy, thousands of free books being distributed to first graders throughout the state. And this bill simply honors them by recognizing the third Tuesday in May of every year as Wyoming Reads Day. There's no fiscal impact. All good stuff. Please vote aye.
Is there any discussion? Question having been called, all those in favor of Representative Northrup's motion when the Committee of the Whole rise to report, do so with the recommendation that House Bill 54 do pass, please say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. House Bill 54 is passed Committee of the Whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 66. Reading clerk, please read the bill.
House Bill 66, sponsored by Representative Brown. Firefighter cancer screening benefits, an act relating to labor and employment. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 8, Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs, to whom is referred House Bill 66. Firefighter cancer screening benefits, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation do pass with the following amendments. Ayes. Representatives Berger, Brown, Nemec, Obermuller, O'Hearn, Pendergraft, Smith, Stivar, Wiley. Representative Brown, Chairman.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the Committee of the Whole rise to report, it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 66 do pass. And with the explanation, I will turn it over to the floor sponsor. Mr. Chairman.
Are you, Chairman Brown, are you also moving the standing committee amendment?
I will move the standing committee amendment, and I do believe at this point it would be best to explain the standing committee amendment as I walk through the bill quickly. Ladies and gentlemen,
Proceed.
I will move that standing committee amendment just so we have that on the record. But ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the aye vote for introduction on this. We had a very good discussion on this bill as we moved through committee. The discussion at the beginning of the last week was very simple. This is expanding what we do already by covering cancer screening, cancer diagnoses for our firefighters by providing early screening detection. And what we're doing with this bill is we're going to utilize the same mechanism that is already being used with workers' comp. And so we're continuing to see that. And there was a question raised during not only introductory vote, but also during committee that, you know, hey, look at the fiscal note. There's $2 million here. What's going on with that $2 million? Well, if you look at that fiscal note, I do want to make sure that everybody understands exactly what we're looking at here. You actually see an anticipated revenue increase, but then you also see an expenditure increase for the exact same price. And what we're doing with this is we're actually utilizing a fund or a mechanism, which is just over $2 billion worth of value to pay for these benefits. At the end of the day, what we'll actually see happen is a reduction to cities, counties, and towns and their costs associated with workers' comp, because we will actually see these cancers get detected earlier and treated earlier, which will cost the state less because we have that presumptive liability on the books. As we're walking through the bill, the amendment is actually a good amendment, and I really appreciate the department as they brought in an epidemiologist who oversees this entire program as it is and basically says, hey, look, we don't want to do this just annually. What we think needs to happen is we need the providers to be able to schedule these at medically determined intervals. And so what you'll see is we actually have the mammograms, the colonoscopies, and also the detection through stool samples done at medically indicated intervals. And I think that's really important for us to understand exactly what we're doing with that is if somebody has cancer, we don't want to only pay for it if they've just had their annual exam done. We want to make sure that something is covered when they have this property properly identified. The next portion that we determined in here, and I do appreciate the department bringing this forward as well, is I was told that this was the CDC who ultimately had jurisdiction over who designated these cancers as being the determinants, and it's actually what they call NIOSH, or the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. And so we did insert that on page 4 and line 7. And then on page 4, line 13, there was discussion about the terminology of retirement, and that would assume that somebody actually had to be in the line of duty for firefighting for a period of time, and they actually had to retire. So we went back, we looked at the language that's currently in statute, and it actually says cessation of employment. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will ask for a question unless there's any questions on the amendment itself.
Any questions on the amendment? Okay, all in favor of Standing Committee Amendment Number 1, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Standing Committee Amendment Number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, with that, I just want to give a couple of quick facts that I think, you know, as we're looking at this, that I think a few of you might be interested in. And I think the biggest portion is last year alone, 3 Wyoming firefighters died in this state due to related illnesses associated with cancer. Firefighters are 10% more likely to get cancer than the public and 15% more likely to die from cancer than the public. And they're 30% more likely to get skin cancer, malignant melanoma, brain cancer, and prostate cancer. So just those 3 facts alone, I believe, are the areas where this bill is a good indication that we can do something to help those that are fighting the line of duty for us. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the bill. There are a lot of things that this body does that some of us question are within the good purview and the boundaries of what good governance is. This, in my opinion, is something that we ought to do. Most of you know I'm a Gulf War veteran. I watched the fires was exposed to all sorts of things. I did so in good faith that the public would have my back if there would be a health hazard. First responders are in the same sort of an issue. They go out there, they put their lives on the line. We've seen that proven out just this last week. And when they carry on issues from that, it is our responsibility, I believe, to stand in the gap and to make good for it. And the second point is that early detection oftentimes means a lot less expense. This is practical from the standpoint that we catch it early. It's easier to take care of and a better chance of success. Therefore, again, I urge an aye vote on this bill. Thank you.
Representative Warnock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. How would you answer the idea that this might create a special class of citizen in the state of Wyoming?
Representative Brown. Sorry, you moved and confused me.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just trying out all the microphones today.
Okay.
To answer the question from the representative here in the capital city, again, we already have statute in place that provides a presumptive liability for these firefighters because we do recognize a few of those facts that I already mentioned. And, regardless of the fact that we potentially are creating a particular class, we do that all the time. We call out ranchers, we call out farmers, we call out a lot of different people out there, and we have different classes of people. This particular one just happens to put their lives on the line for us on a daily basis, and we're just trying to make sure that we cover their medical costs where appropriate.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, question being called. All those in favor of Representative Brown's motion that when the committee of the whole rise to report, do so with a recommendation that House Bill number 66 do pass, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. House Bill 66 has passed the committee of the whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 72. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
House Bill 72, sponsored by Appropriations. Workers' Compensation, Provision for Adverse Deviation. An act relating to workers' compensation. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 72, Workers' Compensation, Provision for Adverse Deviation, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes. Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Swanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Vice Chair Larson?
Mr. Chairman, I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with the recommendation that bill number 72 do pass. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to explain the bill.
Please proceed.
So, folks, we talked a little bit about this on introduction, and this talks about the provision for adverse deviation. And my understanding of that definition is there are elements in the assumptions used in calculation of actuarial liability for possible unfavorable deviations from the expected. In other words, it could cost more than expected. In the insurance world, like our workers' compensation, they add a provision for adverse deviation, which is adding a level of conservatism because you don't know the future. The provision known as PFAD, and that's what I'll call this, is I refer to adverse deviation. PFAD is a percentage or dollar amount above the best estimate of the plan's liabilities, which must be contributed to the plan on top of the regular service costs. In our statute, 274201, shown on the bill on page 2, lines 8 through 11, we have some language that suggests a provision of adverse deviation that suggests that we replace the current language, which says reasonable contingency margin, with adverse deviation, which would correct the language to the industry accepted term. Then we make a conforming change on lines 16 through 21. Now, what I'd like to share with you is the importance of doing this, because when we look at the sum total of the Workers' Compensation Fund, we look at the percentage of the total that accounts for unpaid losses, and the percentage attributed to the PFAD. Our current fund balance is 2.64 billion with a B. The actual liability is 2.1 B. Bringing into the total fund investment income, which over 10 years has been around 4.5%, we could further discount the actual liability from 2.1 down to 1.4, and that leaves our PFAD at 1.2. This is important because this calculation, on page 3, we allow the department to to consider the earnings off the investments of the PFAD up to 5% of the 5-year average of the market value. The bottom line, what this does is when the agency looks at the demand or obligations on the fund when determining the annual employer rates, this bill would allow the department to use the income to offset the needs of the fund and discount the employer rates. Examples of the impacts: in 2023, the rate of return on the investment of the PFAD was 2.5%. If the change would have been in place, instead of discounting the employer rates 0.5%, it would have been a discount of 11.6%. In this year, had we had that same rate of return, instead of an employer rate being discounted at 6.5%, it would have been discounted at 18.4%. I think we can see the benefits and would encourage an aye vote and would be happy to take any questions.
Questions? Representative Wiley.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. You know, when we go home and we talk to our folks, we talk about, you know, peeling back red tape and helping with bureaucracy and moving forward friendly agendas to business. And this bill is one of the avenues to do it. Last year, I kind of took a swing and I missed, but you keep working at it. And this is how you do it. This is how you work it. We keep moving forward with this bill. We're going to give tens of millions of dollars back to our private industry, and that's going to allow them to reinvest in their operations, more employment, more opportunity for folks. And at the same time, this is also going to help keep Wyoming on the leading edge of being a industry-friendly state. So I am on and for the bill, and I encourage everybody an aye vote.
Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for clarification. So this is going on the NICS codes because each different little group of employees, like firefighters to store workers, stock workers, they pay a certain percentage on their NICS codes for the workman's comp. So this is what this is referring to?
Representative Larson.
So after all, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And so that's a great question. So after, depending on where your employee falls in those codes, and at the end of each year, they take the employer's rating and they give you a new income, what your EMR would be and the impact on that you would have to pay into the fund. And they do that then based on the how much money's in the fund. And so they can take the investment income off the PFAB and use that to supplant what we would need to ask the employers to provide.
Okay. Representative Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, visiting with economic folks at the University of Wyoming, they see this as a big deal. Not only does this reward our current safe employers and give them money back, it's a huge incentive to attract other companies from other states into Wyoming. They'll be paying a lot less taxes for these workman comp rates, along with the other tax benefits we give these people.
Any other discussion? Are you ready for the question? Question having been called, all those in favor of Vice Chairman Larson's motion that when a committee of the whole rise to report, it do so with a recommendation that House Bill 72 do pass, please say aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 72 has passed committee of the whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 73. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
House Bill 73, sponsored by Appropriations, Abandoned Mine Reclamation Accounts, an act relating to environmental quality. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2 Appropriations, to whom is referred House Bill 73, Abandoned Mine Reclamation Accounts, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Swanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Vice Chair Larson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, it do so with recommendation that bill number 73 do pass. And again, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to explain the bill.
Proceed.
So we talked a little bit about this earlier. There will be $10 million a year for the next 15 years coming into the AML program from the IIJA for traditional AML programs. Under this program, in the IIJA, the DEQ can take up to 30% of that $10 million each year and set it aside in a separate account to be used for such things as unanticipated subsidence, emergencies, fires, and so on. So we could set aside up to $3 million a year for the next 15 years. But in order to do that, the department has to invest that and keep that separate from the general fund and has to create a separate account. That's what this bill does. It creates a separate account to allow that money to be parked in, and they can use a portion of that that money to oversee the administration of those programs. Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any other questions. Questions?
All right. Any questions or discussions on the bill? Representative Banks, are you moving to the mic? Okay, thank you. Are you ready for the question? Question having been called, all those in favor of Vice Chair Larson's motion that when the committee of the whole rise to report it, do so with a recommendation that House Bill 73 do pass, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 73 has passed committee of the whole. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 81. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
House Bill 81, sponsored by Representative Banks, Public Officer Training Amendments, an act relating to the administration of government. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred House Bill 81, Public Officer Training Amendments. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Representative Olson, Chairman.
You've heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, that it do so with the recommendation that House Bill 81 do pass. There is a standing committee amendment, and I move the adoption of that amendment as well. But I will turn over the explanation of the bill to the author, and then we'll come back to the amendment.
Thank you. Representative Banks.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. This was brought to my attention by a large constituency, as well as many of you have also told me throughout the interim. And so we got together with a group of legislators as well as county officials to try and fix some of the concerns that we heard about. In reaching out to the said department in the bill, we realized that they were bound by statute to some of the things that is in these provisions. So what this does is improve and clean up the statutes to allow the flexibility for the department as well as the officers. And the importance of doing this is out of fear that we might lose some of our good volunteers in our good districts and boards throughout the county, which are already struggling to find positions to fill. What it does is also reduce redundancy because boards and districts already have training available through them about how to be successful and how to best manage a board or a district. And so the redundancy aspect is removed, as well as some suggested removals from county attorney. That is the provision in the end that would remove officials for noncompliance, which by their recommendation was unconstitutional. And what I like best is that it retains the aspect of local control. So on that last page, it says if somebody is found to have handled their accounts in a manner, the manner required, or willfully neglects or refuses these, that the department may request that governing body to either have discipline over that officer or to provide increased oversight. And I think that's the best way to go about doing it, is to continue to keep local control. If there's issues, then we have the tools in this statute to address that. But if not, then we should continue to allow the flexibility for our good officials to continue to do what they're doing. And so at this point, that's where I'll stop and let the good chairman discuss the amendment.
Okay. Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will go through the amendment. It really does three things.
Chairman Olson, did you move the amendment? I cannot remember.
I moved it on the.
Thank you.
On the presentation of the bill in the beginning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It does three things. Number one, it allows individuals to complete their training on their personal time. Number two, it puts in place a cap on the hours of training. It caps it at 4 hours. And then number three, it makes it so that the training requirements apply to board members, not just those handling money, which was the original bill itself. So I will take any questions on the amendment. If not, then we can get back to the bill.
We're on Standing Committee Amendment number 1. Any questions or discussions? Question having been called. All those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment number 1, please say aye. All opposed, no. Standing Committee Amendment number 1 has been adopted. We are back on the bill. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think context is probably needed here. And as your chairman on the Management Audit Committee that actually presented this bill just 2 years ago, I think it's just important, and I'm not going to speak against this bill at all because I think the amendment has actually helped tremendously, but I do think it's important to understand where we came from and why we're here receiving this particular bill again. So let's start back about 4 or 5 years ago. We actually had a bill that was brought forward to similarly put into place training restrictions, if you will, that if you're going to be somebody who sits in public trust, you should be going through the public trust process of making sure, especially if you have the money associated with it, hundreds of millions of dollars across this state are invested with these boards and these commissions throughout the state. We're not talking about, just your city council or just your county commission. We're talking about the cemetery districts. We're talking about the water districts that are around here. This is hundreds of millions of dollars that is being put in here, and we had cases of fraud. And when these cases of fraud were coming forward, the discussion came forward to this legislative body and the one down the hall, and it said, hey, look, we should probably have some training restrictions in here that people we're not seeing them pay attention to what they're supposed to be doing. So we brought that bill forward 2 years ago that said, you need to have some level of training if you're going to be in the public trust of funds. And so that's what we did. Now, the bill as it came forward, and this is exactly why we do what we do, we bring it through the committee. I do think that the committee did some good work here by bringing this down to a 4-hour deal. I don't think there was anything in statute that said it had to be done on, personal or non-personal time. So I think calling that out is probably okay as well. But I do think that it's incumbent upon this body to make sure that we understand what we're going to do and why we're changing something that's only been in existence for 1 year at this point. I understand that we had a lot of pushback from the people that this affected. Hey, look, I don't have 8 hours. This is a situation. Well, we have a lot of training that we have to go through too when we got elected. School boards have a lot of training that they have to go through when they get elected. Anybody who's going to put their name in the face of public trust and they have their name associated with public funds, I do believe needs to have some level of training. Now, the determination for this body is to determine whether or not 4 hours is enough. Is 4 hours enough for that cemetery district that's holding on to $5, $6, $7 million? That's up to us. So I'm not speaking against it. I just want to give a little bit of context as to why we developed the law that we did last year that we passed, went into effect, and within 7 months, we're already looking at changing that, and that's okay. It's just up to this body to decide whether or not we want to call that back and decide whether or not 4 hours, 8 hours, 16 hours, whatever that case may be. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other discussion? I'm sorry, Speaker Summers.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. On in support of the bill. I just think of the cemetery district. In fact, it was members of that came to me. People that had jobs and had to sit through all of that training because they didn't have any other options. I think it's good to amend this bill to figure out just where the sweet spot is, but certainly, particularly the piece where you can do this online and do a check-offs, where you can do it after work, just makes sense. The people of Wyoming on these boards and commissions, they also work. And I think it's important that they have options. So on in support of the bill.
Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On in support of the bill. I am one of those people who sat through that 8-hour training. I happened to be here in Cheyenne on some other business when that training occurred, and it was valuable. It was well done, but it was long. It was 8 hours of your day, and I think that they could condense it in such a way that you would still get that great, valuable information. I'm in support of training the people that are on our boards and commissions, fully in support of that, but I think it can be done in a more efficient manner. And the Department of Audit did a great job of putting together this training, and I think they will do a great job going forward to make this training a way that people can do it from their home, they can do it after hours, they can take in that information in a shorter amount of time and from the convenience of their own home. So on and in support. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Slagle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On and for this amendment. I got feedback from my constituents that there was a lot of variation in the training that different people got. And I think that may need to be looked at in the future. But I think this deal of narrowing down the amount of time is a good deal, because a lot of my constituents had said they felt that a couple hours would actually be able to get all the information that was really pertinent out of the training that they received. So on and for this amendment. Thank you.
Representative Baer, are you at the mic? Okay. Any other discussion? Are you ready for the question? Question having been called, all those in favor of Chairman Olson's motion that when the committee of the whole rise to report, it do so with a recommendation that House Bill 81 do pass, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. House Bill 81 has passed committee of the whole. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move the committee of the whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion passes. Yeah.
The reading clerk will read the committee of the whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 23 do pass. House Bill 24 do pass amended. House Bill 25 do pass. House Bill 33 do pass. House Bill 35 do pass. House Bill 46 do pass. House Bill 54 do pass. House Bill 66 do pass amended. House Bill 72 do pass. House Bill 73 do pass. House Bill 81 do pass amended. Representative Burkhart, Chairman.
Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption of the committee of the whole report.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Congratulations, Chairman Burkhart. Okay, we're going to have a motion by a member now to move a bill from one committee to another. That motion is debatable under second reading rules. Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Pursuant to House Rule 5-6, I move that House Bill HB 44, Parental Rights in Minor Child Health Care, be called from Committee Number 10, Labor Health. I further move that pursuant to House Rules 4-7 and 10-9, that the bill be re-referred to Committee Number 1, Judiciary.
Chairman Zwanitzer, you're standing at the mic. I assumed that was.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Shoot, well, how about under Rule 11-4, I'd like to amend the motion and have that immediate vote on sending it to your Committee Number 12, Rules and Procedures. Instead of committee shopping, that seems to be a safer committee for all of us to debate the bill a second time, should we need to.
So you just made a motion to amend
From the
that
floor.
motion. So I am not qualified to answer that, so I'm going to have to take a little break here and go find out what that rule is about, whether you can amend that particular motion. I have to find that out, so.
Mr. Speaker, I believe it's 11-4 A and B for
Okay.
those looking
I
at home.
will take a look.
Mr. Speaker?
Representative Ward, I've got to act on his motion before I finish yours, so we're just going to stop here for now until I check out the rules.
I just wanted to say that mine requires 5 seconds. I didn't know if you wanted to get those.
True, yours requires 5 seconds, so who are the seconds? Let's record the seconds. Chief, just take whatever 5 you want. And then we will recess for a minute until I review the rules. All right. Thanks for the pause. I'm gonna rule that it is amendable. In fact, it's right within the rule. It's on 10-9, which was referenced in the original motion. The motion to commit or refer, the motion to commit or refer is debatable and can be amended and is adopted by a majority vote. So that can clearly be amended. So Chairman Zwanitzer's motion was to change that from Committee Number 1 Judiciary to Rules. So the question before us is the amendment, which is to change the committee from Judiciary to Rules. Chairman Zwanitzer, you getting up to you want to debate that?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And you know, we've had this several times, actually probably at least 10 times in my tenure here. And, you know, with the media and public perception, it was a close vote on this particular topic, 4-5. And it is probably worthy of more debate. I just don't want, I guess I'm tired of what I would consider committee shopping and picking a different committee that may or may not have a stronger likelihood of passage of the bill. But I do think, you know, we do have a committee that is made up of 13 members, and that's probably a good precedent setting if we do want to do this motion in the future, that it goes to the largest committee possible in the House as another committee. And I just think it's, in my mind, a good way to handle this in the future. So thank you for letting me amend off the top of my head and picking that committee as perhaps the correct committee for a second look at this and perhaps subsequent legislation that falls under this amendment.
Representative Ward for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to add that this bill passed committee 12-1 in the interim.
Anybody else want to debate for the first time? Anybody? Representative Yin for your first time.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I mean, I think my question is for the bringer of the original motion. Why did you choose judiciary? I think it has more bills than any other committee at the moment. Why would you choose that one rather than one that has more time to hear a bill?
Anybody else for their first time? Larson Lloyd for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think in the legislative world, we find that we have bills that pass out of committee, and then further down the process as that goes along, we sometimes come home with a defeated bill and we have to work it and we have to move it into the next time. I just don't recall in my tenure since 2012 us moving bills after they've been heard and defeated, pulling them back out and sending to other committees. I realize that the rules allow that. But if, you know, the first day, look at all the committee bills that were worked over the interim, long and hard. And they don't have a chance to go back to a second committee. They're going to have to wait till next year. And I just don't, I think that's kind of, that's the horse we kind of come in on, and here we are. And so I support the amendment to the call and ask for your support.
Okay, we are on the amendment, which is to move from judiciary to rules. Representative Penn for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really just have a question. Do the 5 seconds have to approve the amendment as we? Yes, approve the amendment to the amendment. Thank you.
I don't, Representative Penn, I'm going to rule that they don't have to, because that was the original piece of the motion, which was to pull it out, right? The second piece was the rule that we're debating now, which is where to put it. And so I'm going to rule that no, they don't have to agree to that. Representative Ottman for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just say that this is part of the legislative process, and I appreciate that, to bring it up, because I know one time there was something that people saw as very important in the committee that takes care of our health, and there was a motion to reconsider. And it passed because people had time to get more information. And so that happens quite frequently, I think. Thank you.
Representative Jennings for your first time.
Point of order first, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point?
Did the amendment to the amendment require seconds?
It does not.
It does not require any seconds. Okay,
Nope.
thank you, sir.
Representative Bear for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, I don't really think it makes a lot of difference which committee it goes to. I think the idea would be to hear it again in another committee and give it a chance for a better view, if you will. So I don't know that the Rules Committee is a good choice or not, but I just think that we should really consider moving this bill to another place. Thank you.
Okay, we're still on the amendment. Anybody else for their first time? Nope. Nope. Chairman Washut, are you heading to the mic? Chairman Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the question came up whether or not committee number one would have an opportunity to hear this bill. We already have a couple bills docketed and being noticed for Wednesday. And as I told the bringer of the motion, I'm not certain that if this bill is reassigned to committee number one, that we'll have time to actually hear it.
Anybody else for their first time?
First for a second, Mr. Speaker.
Fair enough. First for a second. Anybody for their second time before the bringer of the amendment? So Representative Ward, this would be your last shot at this, or anybody else before I go to Chairman Swanitzer for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, this amendment has nothing to do with the substance of the bill. My amendment is primarily to, if it's that good of a bill, let's send it to a second review. I just want to maybe set the precedent that it should go to rules and procedure. And actually, in a perfect world, the motion would come to bring it back to the body and the speaker would assign it to a different committee, which would probably be my preferred option. But if that wasn't available in this motion, I do think the best place to send it in this case is rules and procedure as a good procedure for us as a body moving forward. And then when we get back to the main motion, we can certainly debate the substance of the bill.
So we are now on the motion of the amendment, and the amendment is to move the bill from judiciary to rules. That's the amendment. That was the amendment to the motion. The amendment to the motion. Okay, does everybody understand it? You want me to repeat that? This is on the amendment to the motion. So what this, if you vote aye, the bill goes to rules. If you vote no, you're voting for the bill to be in judiciary. All right. So all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Motion carries. Division having been called, all those in favor of the amendments, please rise and stand still. And whose ever phone that is, shut it off. Okay. Okay, all those opposed, please rise. Less than 37. So the amendment has passed, which is to pull the bill out of committee number 10 labor and to move it to rules. And we are now on that motion, and Representative Ward, you're free to debate that motion, the original motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Amended.
I urge an aye vote on this motion, and also in accordance with Rule 12-4, I ask for a recorded vote.
All right. Does that require seconds too, or is that good? 12 what? Representative Ward, which rule did you cite?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 12-4.
Okay. Two members, I think it requires, it shall be in order for any two members to call for the recording of the ayes. So I think you've got, just write down, choose the other individual. All right, Chief Clerk, please call the roll on the motion to move House Bill, somebody tell me the House Bill. 44, thank you. House Bill 44 from Committee Number 10, Labor to Rules.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Plaston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haraldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Excused? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermueller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stiff? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers?
No.
Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 30 aye, 31 no, 1 excused.
The motion to move the bill has failed. All right, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, I think we're at that order of lunch. Let's do 145. Give us a little.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House stand in recess until 1:45.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. Committee announcements. Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4, Education, will meet after we get a bite to eat and head down to room 3. We're going to hear 2 bills, House Bill 166, Education Savings Accounts, and House Bill 175, Criminal History of Volunteers in K-12 Education.
Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions will meet immediately upon this recess to consider 3 bills, House Bill 64, House Bill 154, and House Bill 126. So members, grab your lunch and meet down there as soon as you possibly can.
Vice Chair Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Revenue Committee will meet upon noon recess, about 10 minutes. So same thing, grab a lunch. Come down to, we're in 6, Senate 6, to hear House Bill 203, Property Tax Reduction and Replacement Act.
Any other chairman? All right. The House will stand in recess until 1:45.